I believe that the Eurocrats have placed themselves in this position where they can't drop Ukraine. They have invested their entire political capital on the perpetuation of the war in Ukraine. So even if there is a ceasefire in Ukraine, it's going to be, as Winston Churchill essentially described the peace at Versailles. It is going to be a ceasefire for 20 years. Even though I believe Churchill actually had far less grounds for saying that regarding the end of World War I than I do regarding the fate of Ukraine. Indeed, if we're going to look to examples of World War I, I've already brought up the example of neutrality predicated on strength with regards to Belgium. But what America is doing now is going to be easily construed as a stab in the back theory. As the Germans did in 1919, the Ukrainian mythology is going to be that Ukraine was fighting against Russia and was at the point of victory until the Americans decided to betray the cause of Ukraine. That, together with my Gallipoli analogy, I believe will be enough to sustain any Ukrainian government in a sense of hostility towards Russia. Indeed, the more territories it'll lose, the more the remnant rump state of Ukraine will be united around this idea of restoring those territories. And like I said, for the Ukrainian nationalists, it's not enough simply to restore these territories or to even restore Crimea. It's a matter of expanding Ukraine's boundaries to the Volga, to the Caucasus, and you can say more realistically to the Don River. In other words, Ukraine must be strong to the extent that Russia can never imperil its existence ever again. So there we are. And like I said with the whole Trump thing, I really just think it really does frustrate me because I really do think it's a distraction. And also, I don't trust in the sincerity of Trump and his belief in peace. I think Trump is looking at Ukraine as a temporary liability in terms of US foreign policy. In other words, in terms of America's economic position and in terms of any showdown with China, having such hysterically hostile views towards Russia is a liability. And thus, I believe what Trump is aiming for is normalization. Peace is simply an extension of that normalization process towards relations with Russia. But like I said, with the whole notion of Ukrainian neutrality being a nonsense, because neutrality, if it's not an emanation of self-determination, neutrality is imposed. The West and the European Union will be consolidating to mobilize its resources to effectively achieve, like the French did in World War I, the restitution of Alsace and Lorraine, the restitution of the 4 oblasts that were sundered away. So like I said, there is no situation in which I see an amicable settlement. If the Russians are still holding to this idea, their hagiography of history, where the Ukrainians are the little Russians, the Ukrainians are the elder brother of socialism in the case of the Soviet Union, then they are fantasists. Because this project isn't going to go away. How are the Russians going to enforce this? Expelling all NGOs, banning political parties. In other words, they would have to do what Zelensky did, but in reverse. And of course, imposing this on a foreign country. And as we see even with the example of tariffs in Canada today, the fact that these will be seen direct foreign impositions will indeed embolden any resistance against Russia, making the whole process of denazification, like I said, a fundamental attack on sovereignty, which will embolden a sense of Ukrainian particularism. All right.